When you think of cars, you think of Europe's legendary automakers. These are the brands that have defined luxury and performance for a century. But right now, they're facing a challenge so big it could literally determine their survival. So today, we're going to dive into this high-stakes drama that might just change the auto industry as we know it forever. The source material for this explainer uses this incredibly powerful metaphor to describe the whole situation. It says European car brands are like a frog in slowly boiling water. And wow, that is a chilling image, isn't it? It just perfectly captures the slow, almost unnoticeable danger they're in. So what does that actually mean for them? Well, it means this isn't some sudden shock to the system. It's a gradual, creeping increase in temperature. The rise of electric vehicles and autonomous driving is heating up the entire industry, and the real danger here is that these legacy giants might not even realize the water is boiling until it's way too late to jump out. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll really dig into this boiling frog idea. Then, we're going to look at some lessons from the past, because this has happened before. We'll meet the new challengers who are turning up the heat, analyze Europe's interesting response, and then we'll wrap it up with the huge 10-year question about their very future. All right, first up, the boiling frog. This part is all about defining the crisis itself. The water is definitely getting hotter, but are Europe's auto giants actually feeling the burn, or are they just getting a little too comfortable in the hot tub?
And here's the thing you have to understand. This isn't up for debate anymore. The future of the car is electric, it's autonomous. That ship has sailed. This shift is locked in, and it's being driven by better performance, incredible new tech, and of course, huge environmental pressures. The path is set, and the race is already on.
This story of a massive industry leader facing a huge disruption, it probably sounds pretty familiar. And to really get what's at stake here, we have to look back at some other giants who faced a similar moment and, well, completely failed. Man, this slide really lays it all out. The parallels are just stark. On one side, you've got Nokia and Kodak, kings of their worlds, right? But they got totally blindsided by smartphones and digital cameras. And on the other side, European automakers, the absolute rulers of the premium internal combustion engine, or ICE, market. Both underestimated the new tech, and both delayed their big move. For Nokia and Kodak, the result was they became irrelevant. For Europe, it could mean a devastating economic blow.
So, who's actually turning up the heat in this pot of water? Well, it's not the usual suspects, the traditional rivals. Nope. It's a whole new breed of competitor, and they are playing a completely different game.
And this chart just shows you how deep that divide is. European brands, they perfected the combustion engine. It's their masterpiece. But Tesla, their focus is on software, like its full self-driving tech and a wild, unboxing manufacturing process that simplifies everything and slashes costs. And then you've got the Chinese brands, who are just using mind-blowing scale and speed to swallow up the global EV market. It's not just a different product, it's a totally different philosophy. So when you're faced with these kinds of disruptive challengers, you'd think the response would be swift, right? Decisive, all in. But Europe's response has been, well, let's just say it's been complicated. Let's take a closer look at the strategy they've decided to go with. And this, right here, is the multi-billion-dollar question. Instead of jumping headfirst into the EV future, some European policymakers and brands are actually pushing to extend the life of the good old internal combustion engine. But you have to ask, does that strategy really help them compete tomorrow? Or does it just keep them sitting in that warming water for a little while longer? The source material we're looking at has a pretty blunt name for this strategy. It calls it collective selfishness. And the idea is simple. It's prioritizing the easy, short-term profits you're making today from your old combustion engine business instead of making the tough, expensive, but absolutely necessary investments for a long-term electric future. It's basically kicking the can down the road while your competitors are sprinting for the finish line. And this, let's call it flawed response, brings us to our final and honestly the most critical part of this whole story. What actually happens in the next decade if this strategy blows up in their face? Because the stakes could not be higher. 10 years. That's it. That is the critical time frame we're talking about. The source seriously questions if Europe's biggest brands can even catch up at this point. Can they really develop a competitive EV with true self-driving and a modern manufacturing process in just a decade? The clock is ticking, and it is ticking loudly. And if they can't do it, well, the consequences are pretty grim. First, they risk losing the entire premium market to Tesla, just handing it over. Second, They risk being completely overwhelmed in the mass market by the sheer volume and speed of Chinese brands. And finally, this isn't just about car companies. This is a risk of a severe economic shock to the entire continent of Europe, which depends so heavily on its auto industry. So we're going to end on this one provocative thought. The German Big Three and all their European peers have been the undisputed kings of the road for our entire lives. But as that water keeps getting hotter and hotter, you have to wonder, are we watching the beginning of the end? Have they just waited too long to notice the boil and now they can't jump to safety? That is the 10-year question.